I am Michelle Halkett. I am the publisher of Central Avenue, and this is episode 2 of the Central Avenue webinar. It's our attempt to help pull back the curtains on what I think is a bit of a black box of traditional publishing. I founded Central Avenue coming up on 15 years ago. Actually, as of May 1st, we'll be in business for 15 years. And we have grown steadily pretty much every year since our inception. So it's been pretty cool. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about acquisitions. I'm joined by Cathy Hedrick-Armstrong. She's an agent with the Purcell Agency. And over the next hour, we're going to talk about all sorts of things, such as what we're looking for in new books and authors, how we work with authors during the submissions process, timelines, editing, and handling rejection. We're joined by Bo Adler. He works at Central Avenue, and he'll be here to keep us on track. And you probably got the recording message, but we are recording this, and we'll post the full episode to YouTube after. Now, if you do have any questions, just put them in the chat as they come to you, and we'll keep this super informal because it's just a nice small group. So before we get started, though, I do want to put in a quick plug for our annual poetry contest, which is open for just another few weeks. We accept submissions from anyone, and we're going to select one winner who'll get $500 US cash, and there are 3 runners-up who get $100. Those winners, along with about 50 other poems, will show up in our next book. This one just came out. This is the 2024 edition. It's distributed to the trade, so you can buy it, wherever you love to buy books. It's truly a fantastic collection. I'm not asking you to buy it, but I am asking if you can share our submissions with any poets that you know. Bo's going to put the link in the chat. Oh, I see it's there now. So yeah, I'd love to see what you have for us. So enough of that. Let's get into today's topic. Cathy, why don't you start by introducing yourself?
Thank you. So my name is Cathy Hedrick-Armstrong, and I am a senior literary agent at the Purcell Agency. I was an author first, and actually Michelle was my publisher. And by the way, she's fabulous. I was an author first, and then about 7 years ago or so, I had the opportunity to train as a literary agent, and kind of went into it a little nervous just because I was an author to begin with, and I didn't know whether or not I could legitimately be an author and an agent at the same time, and was very quickly disabused of that notion following other author agents in the process. So basically, I represent mostly adult, some YA, in the categories of romance, which is my bread and butter. I absolutely love romance of any trope. Romance, mystery, thrillers, book club, and I'm just dipping my toes into fantasy, mostly fantasy romance, but fantasy. So, so that's about me.
Yeah. Now, one thing on the fantasy romance, there's this new thing out called romantasy, and
Yep.
I have heard some writers in that subgenre say, "I hate that word. Please don't use it." But it is definitely a big category right now.
It's descriptive, and it cuts to the chase. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Bo, I'm going to let you act as our moderator, and we've got a couple questions that came in from people who registered and also that we had prepared today. So why don't I let you take it away, and you can ask. I mean, Cathy is really the focus today, but you just ask who you think is right.
Yeah, for sure. So I think for both of you, what are your submission guidelines? So do you ever accept unsolicited submissions, or do you prefer to work with, authors who are referred to you or authors who are represented?
Yeah, I'll go first because I may have a shorter answer. So on the fiction side, we only take agented submissions. And there's a reason for that is fiction is notoriously difficult to sell. It's super competitive. It's expensive to produce. And so I've found that by moving to agented submissions, I get that one more layer of vetting, I guess you could call it. Also, agents are great, good agents are great business partners, and they do a lot of the work for you by finding comparative titles, crafting great book descriptions, author bios. So when it comes time for us to do that, it's really nice having all of the agents' work already done. On the poetry side, I do take unagented submissions. We open up approximately once every year to 18 months, and anyone can submit, and I usually announce it via like social media. Kathy, what about you? What are your guidelines?
Um, well, for starters, all of my submissions go through Query Manager, and I'm currently closed to submissions at this time. However, I am opening for the next week just for those people who are to attend either now or at some point this week on this webinar. And so the address for that is in the chat. It's querymanager.com, query Kathy, and the CAP web. So, but basically, all of mine come through Query Manager. I never take them through email. And I for some reason can't get that across because I still get them through email. But anything that comes through email, I just don't have time to look at it, and it'll get lost anyway. So I'll go ahead and delete it immediately. When I'm not open to submissions, I will take them by referral. So if someone I know, or sometimes even I'm out on Twitter or something, and I'll end up talking to an author or something out there like that, and they have something I'm looking for, I'll go ahead and invite that way. But for the most part, I try to open 2 or 3 times a year for a short period of time, because right now I have 800 queries in my inbox that I'm stressing out about getting through. I want to get through them by the first couple of weeks of May. But that's how I do my submissions. Is I almost never take someone just because somebody says, but I will open to them to look at their work. So that's how I do that.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm getting stressed for you. 800. Oh, I would be losing my mind. Yeah. On the referral thing, I definitely will look at someone if one of our current authors recommends them. There's absolutely no guarantees. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean they're great poets, but because it usually happens on the poetry side, sometimes on fiction. But I will look at them, and I'll sort of break the rule for saying, oh, I'm not open right now, and I will take a look. Or ask Bo or some of our other editors to take a look as well. Yeah.
So like, what makes a manuscript capture your guys' attention when you see it in your slush pile or submissions?
Yeah, Kathy, you take that one first. Holy.
Okay. I actually made some notes because I want to think about this. So in my slush pile, the first thing I look at, of course, most people go ahead and put their query in there, and I'll glance at the query, but I'm going straight to the writing most of the time. And I usually ask for 5 to 10 pages. And I want to see what the writing style is. And I hear a lot of times, well, you can't tell anything from 5 or 10 pages. I can tell a lot from 5 or 10 pages. I can tell what your writing style is. I can tell whether you have, we all have quirks as authors. There's always something that we do repeatedly over and over again. And if you do it in the first 3 to 5 pages, you're going to do it in the next 300 pages. So those are the things I'm looking for. So I'm looking for good writing. I'm looking for, once I get past this writing, then I'm looking for the story. I really want to be dropped into a scene. I want something to happen within the first 3 pages. And I can't stress how important that is. I just spent 6 weeks with my mother-in-law in Oklahoma, and she reads voraciously. She read over 20 books in the 6 weeks that I was there, but I watched her, I think it was 3 times, stop reading a book about page 6 or 10. And I said, you just bought that. Why are you not going to read it? And she says, I got too many books to waste time on something that I have to make myself read. So when I say drop me into a scene in the first 3 pages, 5 at the very, very most, that is probably the number one thing that keeps me reading. And I want it completely polished. It's not that I don't want to do a lot of editing. I will do some editing, but my list has gotten so big that if I have to edit 350-page manuscripts for all 25 of my clients that I currently have, I don't have time to get them out on submission. So I need something that is as clean as it can possibly be, with certain things that the author does repeatedly that we can fix pretty easily. So
yeah, that's interesting. I was recently speaking with an author. she has an agent, and the agent came back to all, they actually went out to all of their authors and said, we will no longer accept any submissions from you unless they've been professionally edited. And this
Oh.
poor author was having a fit because to hire a professional editor is very expensive. And that's not feasible for most writers. And I was like, that's weird, because the publisher is going to pay for the editing anyway. They're going to be doing the editing. I think what this agent was trying to get rid of was, pretty rough work. But maybe they just worded it wrong. I don't know.
Possibly. And I know I actually have an editing document that I send out to all my clients. And I basically ask my clients before they submit anything new to me, I want to know that it's not a first draft. I want to know that they've edited it to the very best that they can, and that they've sent it through a couple of critique partners. I want to know that their critique partners have weighed in. And if they need critique partners, I have enough clients that I can suggest that they work with certain people. And then, incorporate those. And then on my editing document is a list of probably the top 15 things I see that cause me to pass on a manuscript. And I put it in there, this is what it is. And then there'll be like a link to a document or an article online, and even a YouTube video. People learn differently. So there's several different ways that they can learn what some of those things are. Dialogue is a big thing for me. If your characters are stepping all over each other, that's a big thing for me. So there's, by the time I get it, if they've gone through the editing document, it should be as good as they can make it, and then I can work with it if it needs more from there.
Yeah, I fully support and understand what you're saying, because we look for very polished, almost finished pieces. There might be a few typos or a couple plot things or character quirks, whatever, that maybe aren't. They're almost more personal things rather than structural or foundational. But yeah, we're looking for the work that has been done already. You don't necessarily need a professional editor, but I totally agree. Having a writing group or partner or friends that will, like beta readers, whatever you want to call them. Super important. I totally agree.
And then from my perspective, I don't want to send to it. When I send to an editor, Michelle, if I send you a manuscript, I want to make sure that we've done everything from our end to the very best of our ability. It is going to be, in my opinion, as close to publish ready as we can make it, understanding that you will do more more editing beyond that. Yeah. But I don't want you looking at a manuscript going, oh my gosh, there's so many grammatical errors in here, I don't know what to do with them. I want you to look at it and it be so clean, and you go, oh, I love this, but I can make it better. Or I can suggest these edits developmentally to make it better. Otherwise, you're just worrying about the surface level, and I don't want you doing that.
Well, and I think it's distracting, right? So the editor, the acquisitions editor who's reading it, so we have 3 people who are helping to read these things. And if we're distracted by weird formatting or errors or something like that, it's like, oh, I don't want to work this hard and I can't get into the story because I'm honing in on these little typos. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I also think, I would think as an agency, it would make you look bad if you're submitting manuscripts that the press goes, what is this woman sending me? And then we just start seeing those emails come in from that person, go, I don't know if she's going to send me anything good. So I don't have that problem with you.
Well, and that was exactly the mindset that I went into when I started agenting, was like, I wanted to have the reputation, because I didn't have any reputation when I started. I knew I could get them at least once, get them into the hands of the editors. But then when they started recognizing my name, I wanted them to recognize my name as saying, okay, this might not be a good fit for me, but I know I'm going to get a good quality manuscript, versus, oh my gosh, last time she sent this, I just couldn't even wrap my head around it. So basically, that's my goal, is to make sure that when the editors get it, that they know that maybe it's not going to be the right fit for them, but they're going to get a really well-written manuscript one way or the other.
Yeah, totally.
Right, yeah. And how do you guys evaluate the potential of a manuscript? Like, when you're going through submissions, what kind of do you consider the most important when you make the decision to reach out to an author and decide to represent them?
Yeah. So why don't you go first, Kathy, and then maybe I can build on that, because you're kind of the first level, and then they got to get through you, and then they got to get through me. So yeah.
That's such a hard. Okay, so once I get past the writing, the writing's good, and the story, those kinds of things, I basically have got to, for me, because I can only take on so many clients, or everything falls to cracks. I have got to fall in love with the story. And I mean, I have got it, the feeling has to be like, oh my. So, like, if you think about it as a rating system, like you're going to go out to Amazon or Goodreads and you're going to rate a book, you give a 5-star to that book that you just can't get out of your head, and you're going to think about it and you're going to recommend it to all your friends. And a 4 is like, I really like it. I might buy it for a friend. And like a 3 is like, for me, it's like, yeah, I liked it. It was really good. That's kind of how I think about it. So I'm looking at a 5 and maybe a 4 plus when I'm on a rating scale, when I'm thinking about whether or not I want to take it on. So that's the first level. And then the second level is, if I make an offer, when I make an offer, I have a conversation with my client, my potential client. And the number one thing for me is communication. If we cannot communicate, we don't have any kind of relationship, and we can't move forward. I absolutely insist upon open lines of communication, that they have to be able to tell me whatever is on their mind without fear of retribution or hurting my feelings or anything like that. And vice versa. I have to be able to do it backwards the other way too, because it's a relationship like any relationship. And if you're not open and honest, you don't have anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Once the manuscript gets to us, I mean, I try to look at it from 3 different perspectives. So I look at the character development, the writing, and the plot. Sometimes there's great character development, great, like all of those things, but the plot is maybe not what we're good at publishing. So for example, some genre fiction like horror, we're probably not going to take that on. I don't know if we're the right press for that genre, just because I don't know if we'll be able to sell it as well as some other presses can. Um, and it's not for me, actually, it is probably 50-50, the book and the author. So, I start stalking people. I'm looking to see what kind of person they are online. And this is in both poetry and fiction. I want to know that they're a decent person, from what they're posting online. I want to see that they're part of the literary community. They don't have to be a best-selling writer, but I want to see that they're part of this community, and supporting other writers, supporting, booksellers, whatever. I also want to know, the same as you, that they're good to work with, because this is a little baby we have to bring into the world together. And if we can't do that in a honest and direct way without someone getting their feelings hurt because we suggest an edit or maybe a cover that they don't like or weren't envisioning originally, I need to know that they're very professional. So we do have those conversations before we make the offer. Most of the time you can kind of tell that they're going to be just fine. And we wouldn't even get to that stage before the phone call. But I mean, there's times when I've talked to people and I've gone, oh, there's also been times we've taken someone on and they are difficult to work with. And there is a bit of preciousness going on. And it's like, oh, this isn't going to work. What am I going to do? And it never goes well. The book doesn't sell. And it's because the relationship wasn't there, wasn't strong.
Yeah. I think the client has to trust his or her agent or their agent. And I think that the trust with the editor is also, I mean, I know when I worked with you, I trusted you so implicitly, and the best sections, my favorite part of the sections in my books were those that you had said, what if you did this? And they were, because we had that trust there, I trusted that you knew what you were talking about, and going back over it, those are my favorite sections. The best of them all.
Oh, thanks, Kathy. Well, geez, you'd be way happier now because we actually have real editors. I'm just like, I'm a pretend
you
editor.
Were pretty awesome.
I'm a pretender.
Yeah, and so this is kind of more for Kathy, but what strategies do you employ when pitching to publishers, and how do you determine which publishers would be the best fit for particular manuscripts? Like, do you pull on kind of your established relationships? Do you go digging for different publishers, or like is through the grapevine ever?
I dig a lot, even though I finally have established relationships with a lot of different editors. I dig. I dig. So we have a database that we have at our
Mhm.
agency, and it basically lists a lot of publishers, most of the publishers, everyone that we know of, basically. And it lists each of the editors, and it will list what are their preferences, what do they like. And we try to set up phone calls with them and Zooms with them, and to really get a good feel for what it is that they're interested in. They also have wish lists. If you ever look at manuscript wish lists, we go out there and look at that. So, and I look at Publishers Marketplace and Publishers Weekly and see what's out there. But I am digging deeply. I'm looking at every publishing house that I can that represents the different manuscripts or the different genres that I'm looking at. And I will, even if I feel like I have a relationship with one agent, with one editor, and there's another one there that I just think is just a perfect fit for a manuscript, I will go to the perfect fit over the one that I have the relationship with, just because reading really is chemistry. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of business end of it, especially on the publisher side. But if you can't, you have to get past that chemistry first before you can, you know, um, before you can even go to the next step. So
Yeah.
I do a lot of digging.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I some of the best like outreaches that I've had from editors are ones who are newer, and they'll
Hmm.
say, would you mind having a 10 or 15-minute phone call with me so I could understand
Hmm.
what you're looking for? And
Yep.
like, I really appreciate that, because then my inbox isn't going to be bombarded with stuff that I don't even publish. Like, I don't do kids books. I don't do picture. I very rarely take on YA, very rarely.
Hmm.
So yeah, when someone actually asks me, and or what's your wish list, for example. So
Yeah.
like right now, I have always loved magical realism. So I would love like a Neil Gaiman kind of book. That would be awesome. I probably jumped ahead. Bo might have had this in his list of questions to ask. But yeah, I love when they ask, what's on your wish list right now?
Well, and to kind of go back to that reputation thing, you get a
Hmm.
reputation for sending good manuscripts. You also get a reputation for sending stuff that, I mean, if I constantly sent you picture books, Michelle, you'd see my name in your inbox and you'd say, well,
Yeah,
she always sends me picture books.
yeah,
So I want to make sure that I'm identifying who is the best fit to the best of my ability.
yeah,
And if I'm
yeah.
really lucky, especially with some of the bigger publishers, if I'm really lucky, I'll get an email back that says, you know what, this isn't exactly what I'm looking for, but Susie Jones over here, this is right in her up her alley.
Oh,
Send it to her.
yeah,
So if
yeah.
I identified it closely enough, then they will even recommend it to someone else on their team that they think would
Yeah.
be even better.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. You've made
It's
me
always cool,
realize I
yeah.
should do that.
So
Yeah, kind of tangentially related to that, how do you kind of stay informed about current trends? Because they are kind of like always shifting, especially with like the
mhm,
emergence of like different social medias and that kind of thing. Like
mhm,
new things are becoming hot.
mhm.
It's like, how do you stay informed about that? And like, are there any emerging trends or subgenres that look promising or that you personally find promising?
Michelle, you want to go first or you want me to?
Yeah. Um, oh, you know what? I like to think that a lot of the times I've fallen into some of these trends, and it's not like I could predict them. When before social media poetry was a thing, I was following this one blog, and I didn't even realize it was poetry. I just thought it was an ex-boyfriend who was writing me love letters because he missed me so much. And that's how much of a narcissist I am. But that's how good the writing was. And then I remember he reached out and he said that his agent had, pitched all the big New York houses, and they didn't know what to do with him. That was what came back. We don't know what to do with this. It's is it poetry? Is it like, love letters? What is it? And I was like, well, just make a book that looks like his blog. That's literally
Mhm.
what I said to him. Let's just make a book that looks exactly like your blog. And that book went on to sell, I don't know, like ridiculous numbers of copies. Um, and he's written many more since. And so I guess that was the start of social media poetry, because it was a blog first and all that. But I don't think that I looked at that and said, oh, that's going to be a trend. I just
Mhm.
looked at it, and, like, there was chemistry, like you said, Kathy, that I was like, oh, this is really cool. Um,
Mhm.
I think for other trends, like some people have said to me, oh, poetry's dead now. Like it's not what it was back in, the halcyon days of 2018 and
Mm,
2019.
no.
But, and it's true, it doesn't sell the same way. But if you take Rupi Kaur out of it
Mm,
and, maybe some of the other big uh, poets, there is still a very robust market. So poetry was always here and then it went, whoa, like this, and then it's kind of settled back down here. So it's not that it's not a trend anymore. It's still a viable, awesome genre to be in, but it's not like I'm going to stop publishing it because it's not like popular anymore. Whereas, 5, 6 years ago, there were a lot of publishers hopping on the bandwagon. Um,
mm,
I don't know. In terms of other trends, I don't know if I look for trends. I think what I try to do is pick a story or an author that I love, and then we make sure the book looks on trend. So with the
mhm.
marketing copy, with the cover, with the way we're going to market. But yeah, I don't know. What do you, Kathy? You're probably more in tune with this than I am.
Uh, well, in terms of trends, I think, we talked about romantasy. That seems to be just going gangbusters right now. I mean, that's
Yeah.
huge. Um, I heard a rumor, and I don't know if it's true yet, but I heard it from a larger publisher that it sounds like the paranormal creatures are coming back, vampires.
No.
Um, yeah, so I haven't seen a ton of that in my inbox, but that's the rumor I heard. So I'm going to keep an eye on that rumor and see if it's true. But in terms of where do I hear about these things? Where do I learn these things? Publishers Weekly. I like to follow Publishers Weekly, Publishers Marketplace where things are being released. And then just I have a Slack group with a bunch of other agents that we're all kind of sharing information, and we also have a Zoom that we meet once a month. So we're just kind of sharing information like that. What was I going to say? I actually made notes on this question because yeah, basically those kinds of places, Publishers Marketplace, Publishers Weekly, the Slack group and the Zoom group is where I get
Yeah.
that. I love to hang out on Twitter. Twitter is like, you want to know what's going on out there with readers. Twitter and well, excuse me, X and TikTok are the places to go. I think it's really interesting right now. Several publishers are picking up traditionally indie publishers or self-published authors that have made it huge because TikTok has opened their eyes. I think Sourcebooks Bloom has done a lot with that, with the Lucy Score and Anna Wang and these authors that are established on a different platform that are now making it big on the traditional publishing route. And I think it's interesting that romance is going steamier than I remember it being
Mm.
even 5 years ago. I mean, it's gotten very there's still a range of it. I mean, you can get the very, very sweet that's everything's closed door and there's nothing wrong with that and it's awesome. And then you get the stuff that almost borders on erotica. It's just so it's banging, it's getting big.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting about romance because I mean we've published everything from very clean kind of romantic stuff to full erotica. And it's funny because I was just talking to an author about this because they were wanting to advertise their book, that it's coming out. And the piece that they chose to advertise on Instagram or wherever it was one of the steamier pieces.
mm-hmm,
And I was like, I just don't want you to misrepresent the book.
mm-hmm,
Because if in this sort of big announcement, if this is what you put online, people are going to go, whoa, hello. And some people are going to love it and embrace it. And
mm-hmm,
others are going to go, that's not for me. Whereas it's actually just a part of the book. And
mm-hmm,
so, what I said to them was pick something more vanilla, generic, I don't know, whatever, something that is a little less on that. And then, you can always introduce the steamier aspects to it. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, I was just hesitant to go right out and like slap someone across the face with this. Um,
Well, I
yeah, it
can
was
see
just
where
funny
they
because
were
we were just
going.
talking. And I'm trying not to be a prude. It wasn't like I was trying to be a prude, but
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, I think you might just be putting off some people. Yeah.
hmm I can see where they were going with that though, because if you look out at Instagram or you look at TikTok, those are the scenes that they're putting out there. They're at least my whole feed is just filled with them, and maybe it's just because I keep clicking on them.
That might be it. The algorithms learned you.
But
Yeah, because
but
I know
yeah,
that there's sorry, I know there's kind of like nothing that you can do more to anger a reader than to misrepresent your book. Like if you go
yeah,
on Goodreads and you look at the like 1 star, 2 star reviews, it's always like this is not what I signed up for. So if you're like,
hmm
hey, this is a heat level of whatever, and it's like the most mild kind of thing going through it, I do not think that the people who are
yeah,
clicking on that book are gonna be that happy with the turnout.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's right. I think you do have to, but that is what's out there. And that's probably where the author got that idea, was that that's what
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot
Mhm.
of.
Yeah.
But it would be very
Yeah. Let's go
disappointing if
for
it
a
was.
shock factor.
Yeah, and there's a huge market for it. I have a 28-year-old and who's new again to reading, if you will, and her sister-in-laws. That's all they're reading. That's that's all they're reading. That and the
Hmm.
romantasy. So, and you know
Okay.
what? I learn something from everything I read. So there's value in everything, almost
I don't want to know
everything.
what you're learning, Kathy. Don't want to know.
Mm,
Well, I will
so,
look forward to receiving a little more steamy books because, we tend to take on the fiction side. I do like romance, but I like romance with a ton of story and development.
yes.
Like I love historical romance just because I think like there's something to learn from that. But if it's got
hmm
some fantasy mixed in or some steaminess, that's all cool with me too.
hmm
Think like Outlander kind of style
Oh, isn't that great?
romance, which has got like everything, I think.
hmm
Um, but yeah, on the fiction side, we tend to take I tend to be drawn to kind of upmarket fiction, which
hmm
is I don't know, you want to call it, it's not really literary, it's not women's fiction. I don't know what it is. It's just sort of they're shorter books,
I
maybe
understand. My
60 to
understanding, as I say, my understanding of upmarket is that they're not literary. It's kind of a melding of literary and commercial. So
yeah,
it's just a little bit higher uh,
yeah.
with that whole that appeals to more people.
Right. More saying lots with fewer words. I always think of literary
Yes.
fiction as kind of like that, or saying lots with really big words that I have to use a dictionary to understand.
hmm
Whereas upmarket tends to be a little more sparse in, I
hmm
don't know, this is just sort of what I'm thinking. Bo, I don't know if you have anything that you think about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I read all over too. There are some literary fiction books that I do absolutely adore, but I always find that it's very themey. You know what I mean? Like it's very not necessarily nuanced, but it feels very like multifaceted. A lot of times you have to dig deep to find, it's not always super plot heavy, but it's trying to say something or it's doing something big. Upmarket feels like you can, not that it's a lesser book whatsoever or the writing is worse, but it is, something that you can kind of binge through, like devour kind of faster. That's how I've always kind
Yeah.
of approached those genres.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not big on literary fiction. I just don't get it, I guess. And I said that to a friend of mine who that's what he writes and is very, very good at it. And so I went to a presentation and I said, I read it. I guess I liked it, which I guess is not really a very, and he told me, he says, well, what did you not like? And I said, well, it wasn't that I didn't like it. There wasn't anything I didn't like. I just felt like I had to think too hard. And he says, that is your problem. He said, you're under the impression that when you're reading literary fiction, you have to think hard, and it's not about thinking at all. It's about how does it make you feel?
Hmm.
And that
Oh,
was, for me, that was like a big light bulb moment. So instead of reading his books, um, was trying to, are the drapes blue because he's feeling, morose, or it's not about that according to him. It's about how do the words make you feel? How does the story make you feel? How do the characters make you feel? And I thought that was brilliant. And so now I've gone back and reread with a different mindset, and it helps.
Yeah.
you know, I am learning so much because I have always felt like that about poetry. And so I
Mm.
like to call it like MFA poetry. You need a master's of fine arts to understand it. And so
hmm
there's certain poetry that I just don't get, but I do
hmm
get the feeling from it. And
hmm
so I yeah, I've always struggled with reading these like poet laureates and all this kind of stuff because I feel dumb like when I read
Yeah,
them.
thank you. Yes, yes.
But but at the same time, I am getting the emotion and the sense from it. Like I
Hmm.
couldn't tell you what some of the poems were about necessarily. I can say, oh yeah, it was about a guy drinking a coffee in a coffee shop kind of thing. But I remember the feeling while I was
Hmm.
reading the poem. So yeah, I'm gonna take that into my next book of poetry. That's like, I think is that makes me feel dumb.
Yeah,
You can thank Brandon for that.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Okay.
in the
Good.
chat, Leslie Radford says, think of all the literary fiction that gets adapted into movies.
Hmm.
Absolutely true. Like some of,
Hmm.
the blockbuster hits can be adapted from literary fiction.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're so robust. There's so much to work with in them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They're so
Yeah.
character driven.
Yeah.
Yeah, character driven is a great word for that kind of thing. It's, yeah,
Yeah.
so true. I feel like a lot of times when I read literary fiction, I feel very seen, or there's things that like the nuances of character relationships can really move me in ways
Hmm.
that I didn't think
Hmm.
were possible. So
Yeah.
yeah, like I always feel I come away from it feeling very like emotional a lot of the time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we might have to have another like little webinar discussion about genres and what we love.
Yes.
Um, yeah. What else do we have to talk about here?
Well, on the subject of genre, I think we kind of tiptoed around this, but are there any genres that you do typically represent and publish or get very excited about? But also, like, I think related to that, are there any genres that you don't take on or publish that you do really love?
Oh, that you
Hmm.
really love. No, not for me. I Go ahead, Michelle. I'll let you go first.
Well, I love science fiction. I'm a huge science fiction, spec fiction. I love it, but I would never take it on. I think you need a very, not that, any of our editors aren't capable, um, but it's so specific. It needs research. It just needs so much that, um, I don't think we're the right press. I also think when you get into really like certain genres, certain presses have reputations with readers, and you know I just don't think we're that press. So yeah, for me I would say spec or science fiction. That's why I'm like, can we get a little bit of it on the magical realism so I can like
Yeah.
bring my passion over. Yeah.
Yeah. For myself, there isn't anything that I love that I wouldn't represent. So to say that I don't represent science fiction at all,
Mm.
I can't suspend reality long enough for it. Um, and I don't represent erotica. Now, there's a difference between romance with high levels of steam and erotica. And this is my definition. I don't know if this is the industry definition. This is my definition. Erotica will not stand together without the sex. The story falls apart if you don't have the sex on the page. But romance, you can get as steamy as you want, but if you take out all that sex, that story still stays together. And that for me is
Yeah.
the difference between romance with steamy scenes and erotica. So I don't take erotica at all. I
Yeah.
really want to feel for those characters. I want to be part of those characters. It kind of like Michelle was saying, you just really love that whole character development, their journey, and that kind of thing. And that's what I'm looking for. And with or without the sex on the page, the sex is supposed to make it better, not actually be the thing that holds it together, in my opinion. So I
Yeah.
don't take erotica, I don't take science fiction, and right now I don't take nonfiction just because I don't read nonfiction with a few minor exceptions. And I really feel like in order to represent something well, kind of like Michelle with her publishing something well, in order to sell it well, I have to understand the market for it. I have to understand the
Yeah.
readership, and I have to understand what is really good in it and what's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I did
Nonfiction's a whole other
yeah,
beast. Yeah.
absolutely. I did a crash
Mhm.
course with the people at Agate Publishing about starting presses and like publishing basics. And I just had so many questions. They do a lot of nonfiction, and I had so many questions about it just because it's very curious to me because it's like a question of platform a lot of times with the
Mhm.
author, and it just
Yeah.
feels like a whole separate and validity that readers can have with a certain author writing a certain nonfiction book. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a whole other world.
And a
Mhm.
lot of
I
times, when you acquire, the book isn't even written. You're really just
Right.
acquiring
Yeah.
the concept
Yeah.
and the author. And so then it's, 2, 3 years later and the book is written, and yeah.
Mhm. I am going to make a liar of myself. I do have one client who does write nonfiction, but because the topic is so close to my heart, it has to do. She's a survivor of sexual assault, and she has gone on to co-author a bill that has gone through Congress about how survivors are interviewed and that kind of thing. So that's the only exception. And for me, because the platform is so important to me, I wanted to make sure that whomever represented her had a good feel for what she could and what she could not take. I didn't want someone pushing her beyond where she was in her journey.
Yeah.
So that is the only exception. And I would maybe consider taking something like that on, just because it's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah. I think too, we can sort of bend genres when we go to market, right? So I recently saw I guess what you would call like a spoken word artist or poet or whatever, get acquired. And they are billing her book as self-help because she talks about
Oh.
body issues, and I think she's
Mhm.
lost quite a bit of weight. So when I saw it on Publishers Marketplace, I was like, it was in the self-help genre. So I think that's how
Mhm.
they're going to take it to market. So it might not end up in the poetry section. It might end up over in self-help and
Oh, interesting.
affirmations and that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a tough one, especially in poetry, because they can have this kind of memoir kind of feel to them, or they can be more about just sort of true poetry. So yeah.
What about, I'm curious about, Michelle, what do you think about books in verse?
Oh, well, it's funny that you're bringing that up because in next month I am publishing it's not my first novel in verse, but it kind of is. Because I would say Honeybee by Trista Mateer is like a story in verse. But this is a novel in rap verse. And
Ooh.
it's a YA book. I don't have a copy of it. It just is about to ship from the printer. It's called If You Knew My Name, and it's about a 17-year-old kid who wants, his dreams are to be a rap artist. He thinks Black Lives Matter movements and hashtags are just, a trend, something to sort of talk about. His mom is really involved in the community, and he doesn't realize how close it is to his community until he gets wrapped up in it, in some
Mm.
police driven violence. And so, yeah, that's our first true novel in verse that we're doing. And like I said, I don't usually take on YA, and so I'm trying it out because our strength has always been in poetry. And I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
let's try this because I saw it come in from an agent, and I was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's try it. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm really happy so far with the uptake it's getting from independent booksellers.
Oh,
Um,
good.
so, Barnes and Noble's not generally hardcover because it's hardcover. They're not taking on kids' hardcover fiction right now. I've really stepped away from that. And so, but the independent booksellers, I've been so surprised.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll
That's
see. Fingers
awesome.
crossed. Yeah,
Fingers crossed.
yeah. Do you get many of those come across your desk?
I don't, because I've asked not to get them, only
Yeah,
because I don't think that I'm the best person to represent. Because it again, at the end of the day, it's still poetry, and I'm
yeah,
not. Oh, I guess that's the other thing I don't do is poetry, just because not very much poetry, because I don't always get it.
yeah,
If you give me slam poetry, I love slam poetry. I cannot get enough of it. But the rest of the poetry, I just don't get
yeah,
most of the time.
yeah. Except ours. Ours is all good.
Oh, yours is
Yeah.
awesome. Actually, my daughter, I got a whole bunch of yours at one point for my daughter, and that was about the only thing she was reading, and she just raved about it.
Aw, that's awesome.
So,
I love to hear that.
Yeah, I weirdly enough, while we were kind of working on If You Knew My Name and like towards the later end of it, I saw quite a few agents asking for novels in verse, and I was like, that's weird. I don't think I've ever like on my manuscript wish list, I think. And I was just kind of like, that's so weird. Like I'm like really deep in working on this novel in verse right now, and I've never seen agents like specifically requesting that many. And I was like,
Mhm,
is this like some up and coming trend that I don't know about?
mhm,
And we've like
Yeah.
accidentally kind of stumbled into, because this was really one that like it really flew on concept alone. Like it really jumped
Mhm.
out to I think both
mhm,
Michelle and I because it was a novel in verse, but in rap verse in particular.
Yeah.
And that also
Yeah.
mhm,
tied so coherently into the theme and the narrative.
Yeah.
But
mhm.
yeah, it was just weird. I was scrolling through it one day and I was like, geez, this is like just a lot more agents than normal asking for a novel in verse.
Yeah,
Then
I know a few years ago it was definitely trending. I think Joy McCullough might have been the one that I'm thinking of that had written one like that. Young adult, especially in young
Mhm.
adult fiction, it's
Yeah.
really,
yeah.
at least it was really big. I'm not sure if it still is.
Yeah. I think the nice thing about novels in verse is that they're great for reluctant readers.
Hmm.
So in the YA, area, when you've got someone who's, doesn't want to pick up, Iron Flame or whatever, they can pick these up. You can read a couple pages and feel like you've accomplished something, and it flows and it's easy and you can hear it. And so for people who are,
Hmm.
got that kind of musical thing going on,
Hmm.
naturally, I think it's easier for them to read. Yeah.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of a hefty question, but I think a really important one. But how do both of you approach building a strong and collaborative relationship with your authors? And then what kind of support and guidance do you provide to authors beyond the acquisition stage?
Do you want
Yeah.
me to go first or you want to go
Sure.
first?
Yeah, you go.
Uh, so what do I do? Well, as I had mentioned before, very first thing we do when I sit down with a client, when I'm still deciding whether to take on that client, is we have that heart to heart talk about the importance of communication. And if we're not on the same page, I can't go forward with that. That's the first most important thing. Um, Beyond that, I basically am open. I kind of have a policy that I try to respond to my authors within 24 hours always, unless I've basically told them if I have not responded in 24 hours, I'm probably dead. Or so I
Something big's
and bas
happened. Yeah.
something big has happened because, or I've let them know in advance that something's going on that weekend or that week or whatever that I can't respond. So basically, I'm open to text. I put my phone on sleep at 8:30 at night so they can text me at 3 in the morning if they want to, and I'll see it in the morning. So there's never a time that they're not allowed to text. They can call me if they need to. I have a couple that use social media chat groups. It's just easier for them to do that. I also have a chat group with all of my authors, so we communicate together. We all get to know each other. I kind of see my clients as my family, as a separate family. So basically, just keeping open lines of communication is really important. So what else was there? You were asking about the collaborative relationship. Oh,
Yeah.
um, I have an action plan that I put together for all my clients, and basically, it's just a Google Doc that my clients and I both have. Each client has one, and we have access to it. And on that action plan, I ask them to be as open and honest as they can. Is there a publisher you'd like to go to? Is there someone you've seen that you've read the book and this editor, took it on? If you want to do that, let me know. I think I've heard from some other authors. I think every agent handles things differently. Some agents feel that this is that um, they're the professional, they're the one who has the knowledge of the background, so they're going to put together the list, and that's just the way it's going to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. My process is a little different. I want it to be collaborative. I want them to suggest to me what they want. I actually have a writing duo that before they give me their manuscript, they give me a list of what editors they want it to go to.
Oh.
Yeah, they've done their research ahead of time, and I'm fine with that. And I have other clients that are initially are afraid to give me any suggestions. And we just kind of go through that. We're a team. This is a collaborative process. We're a team. I want to make sure that you're good where we're going. You give me a list of where you want to go, and if I disagree with you or I think there's something better, I will let you know, and we'll discuss it between the two of us. Um, so that's kind of how collaborative we do that. Support and guidance beyond the acquisition stage. Again, I'm always here for them to reach out, and then I ask once it's acquired, something's acquired, I ask the editor who acquires it to keep me involved on any big decisions, just so that I'm in the loop, and that at any time, if my clients have anything that they find challenging approaching with their editor, then I'm happy to approach it with them. I've only had that once or twice. And usually it's just because people are non-confrontational and they don't know how the other person's going to take it. So if you approach it properly, it doesn't have to be confrontational. It can be, this is kind of how we feel about it. I'd like to get your feedback on it. Can we find a middle ground on this? And people just aren't used, sometimes people are not used to negotiating those kinds of situations. And so that's where I come in. But yeah, and then I do whatever I can to help with their promotions and just be here. Sometimes I get phone calls, tears. I actually had a client reach out to me last night in a text message and ask me, she's a romance author, wanted to know how many times was acceptable to drop the F-bomb in a manuscript. That was the only thing she asked me. And it just got me it got me very tickled until she said, and I feel like I'm going to have to wash my mouth out with soap because you're like my mom. So, but those are the kinds of questions I get sometimes,
Yeah.
So I'm here for them all.
Well, I've always, I have agents, or I have authors who have agents and some who don't. And yeah, good agents are, your partner and your advocate, and there's like the three of us working together towards this common goal of selling books. So, I love hearing, Kathy, that you do all this with them, because I have encountered agents who are not like this at all, and they don't have they don't end up having long-term relationships. The authors hop around from agent to agent trying to find someone who's just a better partner. We take basically what you've already set up and we just carry that forward into the publishing process. So we have a document that we share that says, okay, I'm doing this, you're doing that, so and so is doing the other thing, and here's the timing on all that. I think, though, I might have what support and guidance you had asked about. Yeah, I think it's important, for the relationship to be, very conversational, and to say, this is how we're going to go to market on this book. Are you on board with that? We just have to continue having conversations. And I think that's where the agent is super helpful as well. I think it's also worth mentioning as we approach the top of the hour is just talking about rejection, because that's a huge part of what you must have to go through, Kathy. Like the absolute worst part of my job is not filing taxes. It is not, doing all the spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. It is when I have to say no. And I say this all the time, but it is not often because the writing is so bad or the author is not good enough or whatever. It's just because it doesn't fit into what I'm acquiring for at the moment. So when I put together, like we had open submissions in the fall, we ended up taking on five authors. And I'm looking for each of those people or books to sort of fulfill a different role within Central Avenue. So Jen's book is kind of memoir-ish, talking about a totally different subject matter than someone else's book is talking about, or written from a different perspective. And so, yeah, that's the worst part, is the rejection. And honestly, as publishers, we get rejected all the time. I just had an author that I made an offer to, and I thought they were going to say yes for sure. Nope, they're doing something else. I'm like, dang, kind of thing. And so we get rejected by booksellers, we get terrible reviews for our books. We get rejected by authors. So it happens a lot. So how do you handle rejection when it comes to
I love that you said that you get rejected too, because people don't believe me when I make an offer, and like I said, I don't make an offer unless I'm in love with the book. Do I know that I can sell it? Do I know that I have the exact right editor that's going to take it on? No, I don't know that. I cannot predict the future. I can only go with my gut on this. So I don't take on anything I don't completely love. And so when I make that offer, and I always give authors at least 2 weeks, take a couple of weeks, let the other agents know that you have an offer on the table. And then I sit by my computer for 2 weeks And I'm just going, oh, please let them take me. Please let them. It's no different than on the other side of it when the clients are when the authors are sending out their manuscripts to agents or when we put them on submission. So what I like to say, first of all, I try not to use the word rejection because it has a negative connotation. So with my clients, I usually try to call them passes. And I go back to the whole chemistry thing, which is reading is chemistry. And especially with larger publishing houses, we don't just have to get through one or two people. We've got to get through 10 or 25. One publishing house requires unanimous consent among their entire team of about 25 people.
Wow.
And I can't get a unanimous consent between my husband and my two kids,
Yeah.
on anything. So it all goes back to consent, not consent, but
Chemistry.
thank you. I can't word today. Chemistry. It all goes back to chemistry. And okay, it's not the right fit for this publisher or that publisher, but just hang in there and we're going to find the right publisher. And, people think that when they sign with an agent, that's the end. Like, oh my gosh, I have an agent. I'm going to get a book deal. Unfortunately, that's not always the way it works. Maybe,
No.
as much as I love that first book, we could have it out on submission for a year or longer and it doesn't sell. I have a client duo that they are truly among the best writers that I have, both in the writing and in the storytelling aspect. And it took them forever to get forever in 3 or 4 books to get their first deal. And soon we're going to be announcing a 2-book deal with a big publisher for them after being with me for about 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And it's just patience. And I'm a firm believer that this business is about patience and perseverance more than it is about what your talent is. Because I see a lot of truly talented authors who will never be published because they lack the, not necessarily the patience, but the perseverance.
Yeah.
Every pass they get feels like a knife to the kidneys, and
Yeah.
they feel like they take it too personally, and you just cannot take it personally.
Yeah.
And I'll say one more thing about chemistry real quickly. It comes down to you have a partner and maybe you have your best friend and maybe they're both the same genders, okay? But you have completely different relationships with each of them. And why is that? Why are you in love with your partner, but you're just best friends with your best friend? It's because it's chemistry and we can't actually identify what it is about that chemistry that works, but it's different for each. It's the same with your reading. And in Michelle's case, I mean, she's looking to fill a specific slot, but for agents, it comes down to chemistry a lot of times.
Yeah. I love that. I love the whole chemistry thing. I think, one of the hardest things that people will say is when I send the no or pass, or I'll let the next publisher take it, is they'll say, why? Tell me why.
Yeah.
Give me the reasons why you rejected me. And it's like, I don't like to do that because I don't matter. I truly don't matter.
Yes, that's right.
And I gave someone recently this comparison, and I'm sorry, we're about to go a few minutes over. But they asked why, they wanted specific reasons. And I said, my daughter, for a little while wanted to play varsity sports. Not one coach, save one, out of all the coaches she talked about, she didn't end up playing varsity sports. Not one of them told her why not, why they didn't take her, why they weren't making the offer. And it's because they were leaving the door open. Because if they had said to her, oh, you don't do this right, or you did this wrong, or whatever, that's all that she would remember. And she wouldn't like that person because they told her this bad thing. And it also just shuts the door on the relationship. And I have said no a couple of times to certain people and then said yes, and their book goes on to do great. But if I had gone to them and said, well, I didn't like this or I didn't like that or whatever, it would have been done. So I try to tell authors, don't ask for the reason why. First of all, it doesn't matter because it's just my opinion or where I am in my acquisition time. And it could possibly close the door on our relationship. So
absolutely.
Anyway, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I should let you all get on with your with your weekend. And thank you so much, Kathy. This was
Thank
lovely
you.
to see your face. It was lovely to talk to you and learn so much about how you are doing your work. Thank you, Leslie and Jen, for joining us, Bo for moderating, and we will be back in a month. And at that time, I would love to talk about the finances of publishing, because I think we kind of got into it here. We're going to talk about, advances, royalties, how books make money, how they don't make money, all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll get some word out about what's happening and the date. But yeah, stay tuned. And again, thank you so much. It was
Thank you,
awesome.
Michelle.
All right. Take care, everyone.